This is Blighted Pine Books, and today we're going to be taking a look at Thomas Pynchon's novella, The Crying of Lot 49. All right, so this novella, or in Thomas Pynchon's words, a short story but with gland trouble, was published in 1966, and it is the shortest of Pynchon's novels and definitely his least favorite. He wrote in his book Slow Learner that the next story I wrote was The Crying of Lot 49, after his novel V. Which was marketed as a novel and in which I seem to have forgotten most of what I thought I had learned up until then. Last year, I read Gravity's Rainbow, which is considered to be Thomas Pynchon's masterpiece. And if it wasn't the most emotionally moving text I've ever read, it was definitely the most challenging and without a doubt the most creative and mind-bending novel I'd really ever read. So I'd like to read the remainder of Thomas Pynchon's novels as I'm convinced that he is maybe the best living novelist, if he is alive. It's kind of unknown due to his hyper-reclusive nature. And The Crying of Lot 49 is his most commonly taught book, I think just because it's so short, it's easier to slip into a university curriculum. So just a brief summary of the text. So this novel, it can be read on a lot of different levels, right? It could be read as like a hard-boiled detective story, as a psychological thriller, as an existential philosophical exploration, or like all three and more put together. And its protagonist, her name is Oedipa Maas. She is the wife of Wendell Mucho Maas. All of his characters have very strange names, and they're fun to kind of puzzle out. She receives a notice that she is the executor of her ex-boyfriend's estate. His name is Pierce Inverarity. With her relationship with Mucho, like seemingly disintegrating, she drives to a supplied address to begin a journey into conspiracy, madness, and self-discovery. Along the way, she has an affair with the co-executor of her ex-boyfriend's will, Metzger, who is perpetually stuck in his years as a child actor, or so he says, and is tagged along by a pot-smoking rock group called the Paranoids. At a bar, she discovers the symbol of a muted post horn on the bathroom wall with the initials WASTE scrawled below, and there she meets a fellow named Mike Fallopian, who is like a far right-wing historian who claims to use an underground postal system that Oedipa had never heard of. And so from there, Oedipa like descends into this world of like paranoia and conspiracy, and she's like searching for this truth behind the post horn symbol in like a meaningless play that she sees called The Courier's Tragedy. She finds the post horn like scrawled all over the streets of San Francisco and tattooed on the arms of old men in San Francisco. She accosts her therapist, who has been peddling LSD to suburban housewives, and the novel ends without a real resolution, but with the clear indication that Oedipa is changed forever. So that's just a basic summary of the story. It's a pretty straightforward novel, given like all of the crazy complexities that made up Gravity's Rainbow. So yeah, some of the themes in the book, the most common in Thomas Pynchon's works, and it was one of the main themes, and definitely like explored more deeply in Gravity's Rainbow's paranoia and conspiracy. And so while it's difficult to sympathize with Pynchon that this novel is terrible, perhaps one flaw is that its themes are really accessible. In Gravity's Rainbow, the themes like swarmed around themselves. At any moment, it was nearly impossible to extract a simple like abstract noun, like this is about conspiracy now. But in The Crying of Lot 49, Oedipa's story is one of descent. Right? She's a wife. She has no children. She's married to a man best described as juvenile, and he's later pushed to the depths of like a childish brainlessness by her LSD peddling psychologist, Dr. Hilarious, and in a state of suspension at the outset of the novel. Her life, it seems, has stalled, and she's searching for meaning. She's searching for something to latch on to. And so she latches on to this symbol of the post horn and this underground mailing system. And so this conspiracy around Thurn and Taxis, the underground mail system, which has one foot deeply rooted in European history and another in the annals of right-wing conspiracy, and a third foot, if you will, in the hypothetical imagination of her ex-boyfriend Pierce, becomes an obsession from which Oedipus simply cannot escape. Also in this book is the theme of the counterculture, sex, and human relationships. Pynchon lived through the 60s. He spent time with some prominent pop culture figures, and ultimately in this book he's kind of a critic of the counterculture. Nearly every male, I think all but one in this novel, attempts to enter into physical intercourse with Oedipus. And there is one scene with Metzger that suggests something even more terrible. And so depressingly, all of the information about the Thurn and Taxus mail system and its attendant symbolism is gatekept by all the men in this novel, whether that be the director of the play, the courier's tragedy, or the keeper of Maxwell's demon, which is like a physics hypothesis, who asks her to sleep with him while watching the news about China and its teeming masses. So while Pynchon is a participant in the counterculture, he makes clear criticisms of its looseness and, importantly, its vapid psychedelic culture that yields unsolid conclusions about interconnectedness and ego death and so on and so forth. Another theme that I thought was really prominent in this book that's like borne out by a central symbol is order and chaos. Maxwell's demon, or a thought experiment that like appears to disprove the second law of thermodynamics, functions as a central symbol in this novel. The demon, physicist James Clerk Maxwell, posits a finite being that can play a game of skill with molecules, controlling a door between two rooms containing gas. As the molecules pass through each door, the demon like opens this hatch, allowing for the fast-moving molecules to enter in one chamber and the slow-moving molecules to enter into the other, thus increasing entropy without work and disproving the second law of thermodynamics. All right, so throughout the novel, Oedipa, I think, at least in my opinion, she kind of plays the role of this demon, functionally attempting to separate fact from fiction, conspiracy from reality, an attempt to make order from the chaos in the novel, right? And I think at the end of the day, I think Thomas Pynchon is asking us to put ourselves in the shoes of Oedipus and see all of us as like meaning-making little demons that are trying to separate fact from fiction and make sense of this crazy world that we live in. A couple other things, just regarding some things I guess I thought about while I was reading was one, her name. So her name is Oedipus again. It's clearly an allusion to Oedipus the king, though interestingly, there's no real agreed upon interpretation. And I enjoy entertaining too, right? So my first thought was that Oedipa is like a female mirror to Oedipus, right? So in the play Oedipus, which, hey, I reviewed, all of the drama has already gone down. Right, the pierced ankle stuff, the trip to the oracle, the escape, the patricide, the incest, and Oedipus spends in the play the duration of it puzzling through all of the available evidence in order to arrive at the truth. Right. Two is that Moss could mean playfully my ass, which kind of rejects the above premise and questions whether or not the real truth about any matter can really be determined. So while it's still just like a literary hypothesis, I find the latter to be a little bit more Pynchonian, putting the punchline in the title. So speaking of the title, The Crying of Lot 49, also a pun itself. Mucho, Oedipus' husband, reveals early in the novella that he previously worked as a used car salesman. He describes like exchanging poor people's automobiles for a slightly better car that will like soon become just as bad as the one that they're turning in, and like that depressive cycle. But working the lot literally led to him to like an extreme depression that he hasn't really seemed to recover from throughout the novel. And so there is like plenty of crying and misery. So he's like literally crying on a lot. But without spoiling the end of the novel, crying also refers to auctioneering, with 49 being the number of post-horn stamps in Pierce's collection. So this is like utterly the most Pynchonian thing in the book, to imply one meaning of the title throughout the novel and then to subvert it on its final page, leaving the reader feeling as though they're both in and on the outside of a peculiarly dark joke. All right, and I thought I would also just do just a little reading from the book as well. So this is like Oedipa descending into madness, nearing the end of the novel, right? And it's just a sample of like Pynchon at his most deeply poetic. This is kind of like spiraling psychedelic style that he does. It's just so gorgeous. I'll just kind of dive in the middle here. The active metaphor then was a thrust at truth and a lie, depending where you were. Inside, safe, or outside, lost. Oedipa did not know where she was. Trembling, unfurrowed, she slipped sideways, screeching back across grooves of years to hear again the earnest, high voice of her second or third collegiate love, glozing, bitching among uhs and the syncopated tonguing of a cavity about his freshman calculus. DT. God, help this old tattooed man, meant also a time differential, a vanishingly small instant in which change had to be confronted at last for what it was, where it could no longer disguise itself as something innocuous, like an average rate, where velocity dwelled in the projectile through the projectile be frozen in mid-flight, where death dwelled in the cell, though the cell be looked in on at its most quick. She knew that the sailor had seen worlds no other man had seen, if only because there was that high magic to low puns, because DTs must give access to DTs of spectra beyond the known sun, music made purely of Antarctic loneliness and fright, but nothing she knew of would preserve them or him. She gave him goodbye, walked downstairs, and then on in the direction he told her. There are passages like that are just like so like rich in meaning and like so thick with poetry that like you'll end up just reading over the page a couple times to just soak in all of the language. So yeah, in the end, I really like this book. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought this novel was a lot of fun to read. For as much as Pynchon is regarded as an impenetrable writer, Gravity's Rainbow itself was removed from Pulitzer Prize contention in 1974 for being unreadable and overwritten. This novel, it's really not that difficult to read, and mostly it's a straightforward road trip book. And I think it might even be inspired a little bit by Kerouac's On the Road. There's a lot of like Kerouac vibe in this text. So also the novel is like overflowing with pop culture references. There's a song called I Want to Kiss Your Feet, which is a play on I Want to Hold Your Hand. And in this book, it's written by a band called Sick Dick and the Volkswagen. So like the Beatles, right? And physics problems and reworkings of Beach Boys songs. And in general, it's like this crazy psychedelic tapestry of late 60s Americana. And so while it's not Pynchon's best novel, Gravity's Rainbow still is, it's a perfect introduction to a writer who integrates and synthesizes America into some truly remarkable prose. All right, so that's my review. So my thoughts, anyhow, on The Crying of Lot 49. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. And yeah, please, if you don't mind, please subscribe down below. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.